The sound of glass shattering echoed through the marble hallway, not from anger but from hands that simply forgot how to hold anything anymore. Emma stood in the doorway of what used to be her bedroom, watching her husband pack his things into leather suitcases she had given him for their 5th anniversary. The zipper's metallic sound felt like teeth grinding against her ribs. He didn't look at her, not once. "James," her voice came out smaller than she intended. He paused, fingers hovering over a silk tie. "Emma, please, don't make this harder. Don't make this harder." As if she were the one who had spent 6 months lying, as if she were the one who had emptied their joint account, as if she were the one leaving for his 23-year-old assistant. If you've ever loved someone so completely that you forgot to guard your own heart, this story is for you. Because what Emma didn't know, as she watched the man she'd built a life with walk away without a backward glance, was that the worst betrayal wasn't just the affair, it was what he'd stolen that she hadn't even discovered yet. And it was what his former business partner knew, the man James feared more than anything in this world, that would change everything. The question isn't whether she could forgive. The question is, could she rise 3 months earlier? The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, turning the bedroom into something soft and golden. Emma opened her eyes to the familiar rhythm of James's breathing beside her, the weight of his arm across her waist. 7 years of marriage, and mornings like this still felt like a quiet miracle. She traced her finger along the edge of his shoulder, careful not to wake him. He'd been working late every night for the past month, the new development project consuming every hour he had. She understood. She'd always understood. That's what partnership meant. You know that feeling when you think you've built something unshakable. That's what Emma felt when she looked at her life. She'd given up her career in architecture to support James's company. It had seemed romantic at the time. 2 people, 1 shared dream. She slipped out of bed, feet finding the cool hardwood floor. The house they'd bought 3 years ago still felt too big sometimes. 5 bedrooms for just the 2 of them, waiting for children they kept promising next year. In the kitchen, she started the coffee maker, the expensive Italian one James insisted they needed. The sound of percolating filled the silence. She loved these quiet moments before the world demanded anything from her. Her phone buzzed on the granite counter, a text from Lauren, her sister. "Dinner this week? Miss your face." Emma smiled, typing back, "Thursday, I'll cook." She didn't know that would be the last normal text message she'd send for a very long time. James came downstairs 40 minutes later, already dressed in one of his tailored suits, the charcoal fabric structured like armor against the day ahead. He moved with purpose, grabbing his coffee, checking his phone, his mind already at the office. "Big day?" Emma asked, leaning against the counter. "Board meeting." He kissed her forehead, distracted. "Don't wait up. I might be late." She caught his hand. "James, you've been late every night this week." He looked at her then, really looked, and something flickered across his face. Guilt, annoyance. It disappeared before she could name it. "This project is everything, Em. You know that. Another few months and we'll be set for life. We can finally start planning for—" He gestured vaguely, meaning children, meaning future, meaning all the promises they'd made. She let his hand go. "I know. I'm sorry. I just miss you." "I miss you too." The words sounded right. They just felt hollow. If you've ever felt like you're holding on to someone who's already leaving, you know that specific kind of loneliness. After he left, Emma stood in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the house breathe around her. The coffee had gone cold. She poured it down the sink, watching the dark liquid spiral into nothing. She didn't have plans today. She'd stopped making plans years ago. Her days had become a series of small tasks designed to support James's larger life, picking up his dry cleaning, managing the house, organizing dinners with potential investors, being charming and invisible at the same time. When had she become this? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Mrs. Thompson, a woman's voice, professional and cold. Yes? This is Martha Chen from Riverside Bank. I'm calling about the significant withdrawal from your joint savings account. We wanted to verify. Emma's chest tightened. Withdrawal? How significant? Papers rustled on the other end. $75,000. Yesterday afternoon. The kitchen tilted. Emma gripped the counter. There must be a mistake. The transaction was approved with your husband's credentials. It shows here as authorized. I didn't authorize anything. Her voice came out sharp, panicked. More rustling, professional sympathy bleeding through. I see. Mrs. Thompson, I think you should come in to speak with us. There are other transactions you should be made aware of. Emma drove to the bank in a daze. Traffic lights turned colors she barely registered. Other cars existed as shadows. The world had become background noise to the screaming in her head. You know that moment when reality cracks? When you realize the ground you've been standing on was always glass? Martha Chen turned out to be a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a folder thick with papers. She closed the door to her office with a quiet click that sounded like a cell door locking. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve to know. She spread the papers across the desk. Bank statements, transfer records, dates going back months. Your husband has been systematically moving money from your joint accounts into an account that only has his name. The savings, the investment portfolio, even the emergency fund. It's all gone. Emma stared at the numbers. They swam on the page like something drowning. How much? $347,000. The office was too quiet. Emma could hear her own heartbeat, heavy and slow, like something dying. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Martha hesitated. This was clearly not her first conversation like this. In my experience, people move money like this when they're planning to leave, or when they're hiding something, usually both. Emma left the bank with copies of everything, her hands trembling so badly she could barely hold the folder. She sat in her car in the parking garage, surrounded by concrete and the smell of exhaust, and something inside her finally broke. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The grief was too big for tears. Instead, she called Lauren. I need you. Her voice sounded like someone else's. Something's happened. Lauren was at the house within 30 minutes. She found Emma sitting on the kitchen floor, still holding the folder, staring at nothing. Emma? Lauren knelt beside her. What happened? Talk to me. And Emma told her. Everything. The money, the late nights, the distance that had been growing for months like frost spreading across glass. Lauren's face went through shock, anger, and landed on something harder, protective, fierce. That son of a... She stopped, took a breath. Okay, first thing, we're calling a lawyer, right now, today. I don't understand why. Emma's voice was hollow. If he wanted to leave, why not just leave? Why take everything? Lauren pulled her sister into a hug, holding her like she was something breakable. Because some people think they can take what doesn't belong to them. Because some people think love is ownership. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She walked through the house, seeing it differently now. Every piece of furniture, every photograph, every carefully chosen detail, it all felt like evidence of a life that had never been real. She stopped in James's home office. The door was usually locked, but tonight she didn't care. She needed to understand. The desk drawers revealed nothing at first. Bills, contracts, business papers. Then in the back of the bottom drawer, hidden behind file folders, printed emails. Her hands shook as she read them. Messages to someone named Brittany. Months of them. intimate, explicit, planning a future that didn't include a wife who'd given up everything for him. Just a few more months, babe. Once the project closes, I'll have everything moved. She won't fight it. She never fights for anything. Emma read that line 3 times. She never fights for anything. Is that what he thought? That she was weak? That giving up her dreams to support his made her powerless? My dear friends, if you've ever been underestimated by someone you loved, you know this moment. When pain transforms into something else, something clear and cold and absolutely certain. Emma carefully put everything back exactly as she'd found it. She walked upstairs, washed her face, and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back was someone she barely recognized. When had she become so small? Tomorrow she would call a lawyer. Tomorrow she would start figuring out how to survive this. Tonight she would let herself mourn the death of her marriage. She climbed into bed, alone in a house that had never been hers, and finally, she let herself cry. The sound echoed through empty rooms, and no one came to comfort her. That's when she learned her first lesson. The person you think will catch you when you fall is sometimes the one who pushed you. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old books, the scent of expensive problems being quietly managed. Emma sat across from Patricia Alvarez, a woman whose reputation for dismantling unfaithful husbands preceded her like a warning. Lauren had insisted. Mrs. Thompson, Patricia said, reviewing the bank statements with the precision of a surgeon examining an X-ray, your husband has been very careful. Every withdrawal technically legal because of the joint account structure. But the timing, the pattern, the hidden accounts, she looked up, her expression somewhere between sympathy and strategic calculation. This is textbook asset concealment. What does that mean for me? It means we fight. It means we prove intent to defraud. It means... Patricia leaned forward. It means you need to be ready for this to get ugly. Men who steal from their wives rarely go quietly when confronted. Emma felt something harden in her chest. I'm ready. She wasn't ready. 2 days later, she confronted James, not with tears or begging, with evidence. She waited until he came home from another late night, and she laid the bank statements on the kitchen table like cards in a game she'd just learned she was playing. Explain this. James froze in the doorway, his face cycling through emotions too fast to track. Surprise, calculation. Then, shockingly, anger. You went through my accounts? Our accounts, the ones you emptied. If your heart is as tender as mine, dear friends, hold steady. This part cuts deep. He didn't deny it. That's what hurt most. He just stood there, loosening his tie like the truth was something choking him. It's complicated. Complicated. Emma's voice rose despite herself. You stole $300,000 from us. From me. I gave up everything for you. I never asked you to do that. The words exploded out of him. You chose to quit your job. You chose to make yourself dependent. That's not on me. The kitchen went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, a sound that suddenly seemed unbearably loud. I did it to support your dream. No, Emma. You did it because you were afraid of failing at your own. His face twisted into something cruel. You think I don't know? You used me as an excuse to stop trying. Sometimes the cruelest thing about betrayal is how the betrayer rewrites history, how they make your sacrifices sound like your failures. Emma felt something crack inside her, not her heart, that was already broken. This was deeper. This was the foundation of who she thought she was. Get out. Her voice was steady now, eerily calm. Pack your things and get out of my house. Your house? James laughed, a sound like glass grinding. Emma, you haven't worked in 6 years. You have no income, no savings, because yes, I moved the money. And you know why? Because I built that money, my company, my work, our marriage. A piece of paper that you'll soon realize isn't worth much. He grabbed his keys from the counter. My lawyer will contact you. I'm giving you 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. This house is in my name too, and you can't afford to keep it. He walked out. The door closed with a quiet click that sounded like an ending. Emma stood in the kitchen, his kitchen apparently, and felt the full weight of her situation settle onto her shoulders. No job, no savings, no home. She was 34 years old, and she had nothing. The next morning, Lauren arrived to find Emma still sitting at the kitchen table, documents spread around her like evidence of a crime scene. "Did you sleep?" "No." Lauren sat down, taking her sister's cold hands. "Okay, we're going to get through this." Patricia said, "He's not fighting the divorce." Emma's voice was hollow. "He's offering me $20,000 to sign quickly and walk away. 20,000, Lauren. From 347,000 he took from our shared life. Then we fight. We take him to court. With what money? Patricia wants a $50,000 retainer for a contested divorce. I have $1,200 in my personal checking account. You know that moment when you realize you're trapped, when you see all the doors closing one by one." The call came that afternoon. Unknown number. Emma almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Mrs. Thompson?" A man's voice, smooth and controlled. "My name is William Foster. I'm calling because I heard about your situation, and I believe we might be able to help each other." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" "An old friend of your husband's. Well, perhaps friend is generous. We were business partners once, before James decided to dissolve our partnership in a rather spectacular fashion." A pause, weighted with meaning. "I understand he's treated you with similar regard." William Foster. Emma knew that name. James had mentioned him exactly once years ago, and his face had gone dark with something like fear. "The man who almost destroyed me," James had said. "What do you want?" "To meet. To talk. There's a cafe on 5th and Morrison. Anderson's. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I think you'll find it worth your time." He hung up before she could respond. Lauren was adamant. "You can't meet this man. You don't know anything about him. I know James is terrified of him." "Exactly. Which means he has power, James doesn't." Emma looked at her sister, and for the first time in days, there was something other than defeat in her eyes. "I have nothing left to lose, Lauren. Nothing. Maybe this man can tell me something that will help." That night, Emma did something she hadn't done in years. She Googled William Foster. The results were extensive. Forbes articles, business journals, society page photographs from charity galas. William Foster wasn't just wealthy. He was formidable. Real estate empire, technology investments, reputation for ruthless business acumen tempered with surprising philanthropy. And photographs. Always impeccably dressed, always alone at events, always with eyes that seemed to see through cameras into something deeper. The articles about the dissolved partnership with James were harder to find, buried in business journals from 8 years ago. The language was vague. Irreconcilable differences, divergent visions, mutual decision to part ways. But one blog post from a journalist who'd since deleted their site told a different story. Sources close to the partnership suggest Thompson used Foster's proprietary designs without credit, then forced him out of their joint company through legal maneuvering that bordered on fraud. Foster chose not to fight publicly, but insiders say he's never forgotten. Emma read that 3 times. James had stolen from William Foster too. She closed her laptop and stared at her reflection in the darkened screen. Sometimes God closes every door except the one you're afraid to walk through. Sometimes that's the point. The next day, Emma dressed carefully. Not for beauty, but for dignity. A structured dress that felt like armor, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry. She wanted to look like someone who couldn't be broken, even if she felt like she was held together with wire. Anderson's Cafe was the kind of place where power lunches happened quietly. Dark wood, leather booths, soft lighting that made everyone look like they had secrets worth keeping. William Foster stood when she approached. He was taller than she'd expected from photographs, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that assessed her with unsettling directness. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming." His handshake was firm, brief. He gestured to the booth, waiting until she sat before taking his own seat, old-fashioned manners that felt foreign in the modern world. "I'll be direct," he said, once coffee had been poured by a discreet waitress. "I know what James did to you. I know about the money, the affair, the way he's trying to force you into accepting pennies on the dollar for years of your life." Emma's hands tightened around her cup. "How?" "I make it my business to know things about James Thompson. He took something from me once. I've been waiting a long time for the right moment to return the favor. And I'm that moment?" "You could be." He leaned back, studying her. "Your husband is on the verge of closing the biggest development deal of his career. $300 million. It requires spotless reputation, perfect credit, and absolute trust from his investors. So imagine if his investors discovered he'd been systematically defrauding his own wife. Imagine if they learned about the affair, the hidden accounts, the pattern of deception. Imagine if someone filed a very public, very detailed lawsuit that revealed every ugly truth." Emma felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You want me to destroy him? I want to give you the means to fight him. And yes, in the process, it would certainly complicate his business dealings, perhaps irreparably." William's expression didn't change. "I can provide you with the best lawyers money can buy. I can fund your divorce proceedings no matter how long they take. I can make sure you walk away with exactly what you deserve. And what do you want in return? Permission to use the information that comes out in your divorce, public documents, public knowledge, but weaponized at precisely the right moment to destroy his deal. Nay, dear ones, have you ever been offered revenge dressed as justice?" Emma looked at this man, this stranger who apparently hated her husband as much as she was learning to. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to watch James lose everything the way she had, but another part, the part that still remembered who she'd been before all this, hesitated. "I need to think about it." "Of course." William pulled a card from his jacket, sliding it across the table. "Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. Take your time, but Mrs. Thompson, don't take too long. James is planning to close his deal in 6 weeks. After that, his money will be protected in ways that make it very difficult to touch. You have a window. Use it wisely." He stood, placed money on the table for the coffee and paused. "For what it's worth, I've been watching your husband for 8 years. I've seen him manipulate, steal, and destroy people's lives without conscience. You're not his first victim, but you could be his last." He left her sitting in the cafe, his card in her hand, feeling like she'd just been offered a deal with something that wasn't quite the devil, but wasn't quite salvation either. Emma sat there until her coffee went cold, turning the card over and over in her hands. Outside, the city moved past the windows, people going about their lives, unaware that hers was balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything. She thought about James's face when he'd told her to get out, the casual cruelty, the way he'd rewritten their entire history to make her the villain of her own story. "You used me as an excuse to stop trying." Maybe he was right. Maybe she had made herself small. Maybe she had hidden inside his life instead of building her own, but that didn't give him the right to take everything. Emma put the card in her purse, paid for coffee that William had already covered, and walked out into the afternoon light. She didn't know it yet, but she'd already made her decision. Some doors you walk through not because you want to, but because every other path has been closed by someone else's choices. And sometimes, dear friends, God's plan for your redemption looks nothing like you expected. The eviction notice came on a Thursday. Not actually eviction. James was too careful for that. A request for property settlement in legal language that translated to, "You have 30 days to leave the house we built together." Emma sat on the bedroom floor, the letter in her hand, and finally understood what rock bottom felt like. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It was just cold. The kind of cold that settles into your bones and makes you wonder if you'll ever feel warm again. Lauren had offered her spare room. Patricia had called twice asking about the retainer. William Foster's card sat on her nightstand like a loaded gun she couldn't decide whether to pick up, and Emma, who had spent 7 years being Mrs. Thompson, supporting and smoothing and accommodating, felt something inside her finally calcify into clarity. She picked up her phone and called the number on the embossed card. William answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Thompson." "Yes." Her voice was steady. "Decided. But I have conditions." They met again at his office this time, a penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of space that made you feel like you were floating above everything, untouchable by the messiness of the world below. William listened as Emma outlined her terms. Patricia would remain her lawyer, not his. She would maintain control of all decisions regarding the divorce. Any information used against James would be her choice to release, not his. "And one more thing," Emma said, meeting his eyes directly. "If we do this, I want to understand why. Not the business reason, the real reason. Why do you hate him so much? If you've ever needed to know someone's truth before trusting them with yours, you understand this moment." William was silent for a long moment, looking out at the city. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that 8 years hadn't lightened. "James and I started a company together when we were young and stupid enough to believe friendship meant something. I had the designs, the vision. He had the charisma, the connections. We were going to build something revolutionary, sustainable housing developments that would change how cities grew." He turned back to face her. "I worked 70-hour weeks, poured everything into the designs. Then, 3 weeks before our first major investor meeting, James went alone, with my designs. He pitched them as entirely his work, secured the funding, and used the money to buy me out of the company through a contract loophole I'd been too trusting to notice." Emma felt her chest tighten with recognition. "He stole your work. He stole my life's vision and built an empire on it. Every building he's ever developed uses my original concepts. Every dollar he's made came from my innovations. And he did it all while telling our industry I was a failed partner who couldn't handle the pressure." William's expression hardened. "I spent 8 years rebuilding my reputation from nothing. So yes, Mrs. Thompson, I hate him, with precision and patience. Why didn't you sue? I was young. The contract was ironclad, and James had already started destroying my credibility. By the time I had the resources to fight, the statute of limitations had passed." He paused. "But theft doesn't have a statute of limitations when it comes to karma. It just requires patience." Emma understood. She was looking at her own future. 8 years of rebuilding, of watching the person who destroyed you prosper while you clawed your way back to zero. "I won't be a weapon for your revenge," she said quietly. "But I will fight for what's mine." If that damages James's deal in the process, I can live with that. That's all I'm asking." William gestured to a folder on his desk. "Patricia has already been contacted. Your retainer is handled. We're filing a comprehensive petition tomorrow. Asset disclosure, fraud investigation, the works. It will be public record." "He'll be furious." "Good." William's smile was cold. Fury makes people sloppy. Emma picked up the folder, feeling its weight. Inside were documents that would rip her marriage apart in the most public way possible. Part of her mourned that. The part that still remembered loving James, or at least loving who she thought he was. But another part, the part that was learning to be someone new, felt something else. Not revenge, not even satisfaction. Relief. The relief of finally fighting back. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She walked through the house she'd soon be leaving, touching walls she'd painted, counters she'd chosen, spaces she'd filled with dreams of a future that was never going to happen. In James's office, she found herself standing in front of his awards and achievements, plaques and photographs documenting his rise. Businessman of the Year, innovative developer, community leader, all built on stolen designs and stolen money and stolen years of people's lives. She didn't destroy anything. She didn't need to. Tomorrow, the truth would do more damage than she ever could. Instead, she sat at his desk and pulled out a piece of paper. She wrote a letter she would never send. "James, I hope someday you understand what you took from me. Not the money, though that mattered. Not the house or the life we built. Though losing those breaks something in me. You took my trust, my years, my belief that loving someone completely was safe. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you for that, but I know I'll survive it, because you were wrong about me. I'm not weak. I just loved you more than I loved myself. That was my mistake. Not yours to exploit. Goodbye." She folded the letter and put it in her pocket. Tomorrow, Patricia would file papers that said everything this letter couldn't. Dear friends, have you ever reached that moment where grief transforms into decision? When you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" The next morning, Emma woke to 17 missed calls. James, his lawyer, numbers she didn't recognize. The divorce filing had gone public. Patricia called at 8 a.m., her voice carrying grim satisfaction. "It's done." And Emma? The press picked it up. "Prominent developer faces fraud allegations in messy divorce." It's everywhere. Emma should have felt victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. James showed up at the house at noon, bypassing the lock code he'd changed. She'd had the locks changed 3 days ago on William's advice. He was pounding on the door, shouting loud enough for neighbors to hear. "Emma, Emma, open this door!" She looked through the window and saw him, red-faced, furious, desperate. This was a James she'd never seen before, the mask completely off. Lauren was with her, having stayed over the night before. "Don't open it. Let him yell." But Emma felt something shift. She'd spent 7 years accommodating this man's emotions, managing his stress, smoothing his rough edges for the world. Not anymore. She opened the door, but left the security chain on. "Lower your voice or I'm calling the police." "You bitch." The word came out like a slap. "You think you can destroy me? Do you have any idea what you've done? My investors are pulling out. The bank is freezing my accounts pending investigation. You've ruined everything. I filed for divorce and requested asset disclosure. If that ruins you, maybe you shouldn't have stolen from your wife. I gave you everything. This house, this life. You gave me a prison made of pretty lies." Emma felt strangely calm. "And you gave yourself permission to take it all back whenever you wanted. I'm just asking for what was legally mine to begin with." James's face twisted. "This is about him, isn't it? William Foster. I heard he's funding this, you stupid woman, don't you see? He's using you to get to me." Maybe, or maybe we're using each other to get to the truth. There is no truth. There's just you being vindictive because I chose to leave an unhappy marriage. You stole $300,000, James. That's not leaving. That's robbery. Something in his expression changed, calculation replacing rage. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. The James she'd fallen in love with a decade ago. Emma, please, can we talk, really talk, without lawyers and anger and... His eyes filled with tears she'd never seen before. I made mistakes. I know I did. But maybe we can work this out. Maybe we can... No. The word was simple, final. Emma. I said no, James. We're not working anything out. We're not talking. We're done. The only conversations we'll have from now on will be through lawyers. Now get off my property before I call the police. Sometimes the hardest word to say isn't goodbye. It's no. She closed the door on his protests, locked it, walked back to the kitchen where Lauren sat with wide eyes. Holy shit, Lauren breathed. That was terrifying. Emma's hands were shaking now, adrenaline catching up. Did I really just do that? You did. You really did. Lauren pulled her into a hug. I'm so proud of you. Emma let herself be held, feeling the tremors work through her body. She'd stood up to James. She'd said no. She'd drawn a line and held it. It felt like learning to breathe again after years underwater. That afternoon, William called. I saw the news. How are you holding up? Honestly, I don't know. Part of me feels strong. Part of me feels like I'm going to shatter. That's normal. You've just done something very brave. Or very stupid. Sometimes they're the same thing. A pause. Emma. May I call you Emma? Yes. Would you have dinner with me? Not business, just dinner. You've been through hell this week. You shouldn't have to eat alone. Emma hesitated. This felt like crossing a line from business arrangement into something else. Something undefined. But she was so tired of eating alone, so tired of being alone in her fear. Okay, but somewhere quiet. I can't handle cameras right now. I know just the place. They met at a small Italian restaurant tucked into a neighborhood far from downtown. The kind of place locals protected like a secret. Warm lighting, checkered tablecloths, the smell of garlic and fresh bread. William was already there, standing when she arrived. He'd dressed down, no suit, just a simple shirt that made him look less intimidating, more human. Thank you for coming. They ordered wine, pasta, salad. The conversation started awkward, formal, then gradually relaxed into something real. William told her about building his second company from nothing. The years of 70-hour weeks, the failures, the small victories, the loneliness of success achieved through sheer stubbornness. Do you have family? Emma asked. Parents passed years ago. No siblings, never married. He paused. I've been told I'm married to my work. It's not untrue. That sounds lonely. It is, but it's safe. No one can take from you what you never give them access to. Emma understood that. She was learning it. What about you? William asked. What did you dream of? Before James, before all this? No one had asked her that in years. I wanted to be an architect, not buildings exactly, spaces. I wanted to create places where people felt held, safe, like they could finally breathe. She smiled sadly. I designed a community center for my thesis, won an award, got job offers. Then I met James and everything else felt less important than supporting him. Do you regret it? She thought about that, really thought. I regret making myself disappear. I don't regret loving him. Even knowing how it ended, I don't regret that I was capable of that kind of love. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. William's eyes held something soft. "That's the difference between you and him. You're capable of real love. He's only capable of possession." They talked until the restaurant started emptying, until the candles on tables burned low and the waitstaff began stacking chairs. Walking Emma to her car, William said, "I know this started as business, my revenge tangled up with your justice, but Emma, I hope when this is over we might be friends, real ones, not just allies in mutual destruction." He laughed. "Yes, that." Emma looked at this man who'd been a stranger 2 weeks ago, who'd offered her a weapon at her lowest moment, who'd sat across from her tonight and talked about loneliness and dreams like they mattered. "I'd like that," she said. "The friends part." Driving home through empty streets, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope, not for James, not for her marriage, not even for winning the divorce. Hope that maybe she could survive this. That maybe there was a version of her life on the other side of this pain that was worth living. And sometimes, dear ones, God's redemption doesn't come through fixing what broke. It comes through showing you what's possible when you stop trying to hold broken things together. 3 months. That's how long it took for Emma's life to become unrecognizable. She moved out of the house in early autumn, when the trees were starting to turn and the air carried that specific sharpness that meant endings. Lauren helped her pack, sorting through 7 years into boxes labeled keep, donate, evidence for lawyers. Most of it ended up in the donate pile. "Are you sure?" Lauren asked, holding up a photo album from the honeymoon. "These are your memories. They're proof I survived something." Emma took the album, studied the faces of 2 people who'd believed in forever. "But I don't need to keep carrying them." She found a small apartment across town. Nothing like the house. 2 bedrooms, basic kitchen, a balcony barely big enough for a chair and a plant. But the lease was in her name alone. The locks answered to her keys. The space was hers. For the first week, she barely had furniture. A mattress on the floor. A card table with 1 chair. Boxes she was too tired to unpack. She'd sit on that balcony as the sun set, drinking tea from a chipped mug, and feel something she hadn't felt in years. Peace, not happiness, not yet. But the deep, bone-settling relief of not having to manage anyone else's emotions. Not having to wonder when the next betrayal would come. Just quiet. Dear friends, if you've ever had to rebuild your life from nothing, you know this strange grief-joy. The pain of loss mixed with the freedom of starting over. The divorce proceedings became brutal quickly. James fought everything. Every asset, every receipt, every year of their marriage became evidence in a war neither of them was winning. Patricia called Emma weekly with updates. "He's claiming you had an affair. No evidence, just accusations. He's trying to argue the money was his separate property because he earned it. He's requesting you pay his legal fees because you initiated the divorce." Each new development felt like being cut. Small slices, death by 1,000 legal maneuvers. But Emma didn't break. She couldn't afford to. William had been true to his word. The legal bills went to him. Patricia had unlimited resources to fight. And slowly, painfully slowly, the truth emerged. The forensic accountant they hired found everything. Hidden accounts, falsified documents, years of James moving money through shell corporations. The affair with Brittany turned out to be just the latest. There had been others. The personal trainer, the marketing consultant, the assistant before Brittany. "He's a serial cheater," Patricia said bluntly, "and he's stupid about hiding it. Every hotel stay charged to business accounts, every gift purchased with joint credit cards. Emma, we have him." But victory didn't feel like Emma thought it would. It just felt heavy. She started seeing a therapist in October, Dr. Sarah Chen, recommended by Lauren, who specialized in trauma and rebuilding. "I don't know who I am anymore," Emma said in their first session. For 7 years, I was James's wife. Now I'm... What? A victim? A divorcee? Someone to pity? You're Emma. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle. Who was Emma before James? Emma tried to remember. The girl who'd stayed up all night drawing building plans, who'd believed she could create spaces that healed people, who'd had dreams bigger than just supporting someone else's. I think I forgot her, Emma whispered. Then maybe it's time to meet her again. Dr. Chen gave her homework. Spend 1 hour a day on something that had nothing to do with the divorce, James, or defining herself through pain. Something just for her. Emma didn't know what that was anymore. She tried reading but couldn't focus. Tried cooking, but eating alone felt too sad. Tried TV, but every show seemed to be about betrayal or divorce or people moving on while she felt stuck. Then, one afternoon, she found herself in an art supply store. She wasn't sure how she'd gotten there, but standing among the pencils and paper and possibility, something in her chest loosened. She bought a sketchbook and charcoal, went home, sat on her tiny balcony as the sun set. And she drew. Not buildings, not architecture, just lines, shapes, the way light fell across the balcony railing, the curve of the neighbor's tree branch, simple things that didn't mean anything except that they were there and she was noticing them. Sometimes healing doesn't look like progress. Sometimes it looks like sitting still and remembering how to see beauty again. William called her regularly. At first, it was always about the divorce, strategy sessions, document reviews, coordinating with Patricia. But gradually, the calls became something else. They'd talk about their days. He'd tell her about a project he was developing, affordable housing with sustainable design. She'd share small victories, like finally unpacking all the boxes or cooking a meal that didn't come from the freezer section. "How are you, really?" he asked one evening in November. Emma thought about it. "I'm learning to be alone without being lonely. Some days are better than others. That's more honest than most people manage. I'm tired of lying. Even the small lies we tell to be polite. I spent years pretending to be happy. I'm done pretending." "Good." A pause. "Emma, I need to tell you something. About the divorce." Her stomach tightened. "What?" "James reached out to me. Directly. He's offering a settlement. Full disclosure of assets. 50-50 split. No contest." "Everything you were asking for from the beginning." Emma sat down, the phone pressed to her ear. "Why?" "His investors gave him an ultimatum. Clean up the scandal or they walk. The divorce is damaging his reputation. He wants it over." "And you, his development deal?" William was quiet for a long moment. "The deal fell apart 3 weeks ago. The investors pulled out when the fraud allegations became public. James lost everything he was trying to protect. So we won." "Did we?" William's voice was strange, hollow. "I spent 8 years wanting this, wanting to watch him lose everything the way I did. Now it's happened, and I just feel empty." Emma understood. Revenge was supposed to feel better than this. "What do I do?" she asked. "About the settlement. Take it. Take everything you're owed and walk away. Don't drag this out just because you can. That's what he did to us. Don't become him." She took the settlement. 2 weeks before Christmas, Emma signed papers that officially ended her marriage. Patricia handed her a check that represented half of everything James had built. Everything he'd built on stolen designs and stolen trust. It was more money than Emma had ever imagined having. Enough to buy a house, to start over, to never worry again. She deposited it and felt nothing. That night, she sat on her balcony in the cold, wrapped in a blanket, and let herself cry. Not for James, not for the marriage, but for all the years she'd lost believing in a lie, for the woman she'd been who'd made herself small, for the dreams she'd set aside. She mourned her old life and her old self, and somewhere in that grief, she started to let them go. Dear ones, healing isn't linear. Some days you're strong, some days you're shattered. Both are okay. Both are part of becoming whole. For Christmas, Emma did something she hadn't done in years. She went home to her parents' house. Lauren was there with her family. The house smelled like cookies and pine and belonging. Her mother hugged her at the door, a long, tight embrace that said everything words couldn't. "I'm so proud of you," her mother whispered. "Not for leaving, for surviving it." They didn't talk about James. They didn't talk about the divorce. They just existed together as family, and that was enough. But on Christmas Eve, Emma's father pulled her aside. "I need to say something. I never liked him. James. Never thought he was good enough for you. Dad, let me finish. I didn't say anything because you seemed happy, or I thought you did. And I didn't want to be the father who couldn't let go of his daughter." He took her hands. "But Emma, you were always meant for more than being someone's support staff. You had vision, talent, dreams. I hope you remember that now." Emma's throat tightened. "I'm trying to." "Good. Because the world needs what you can create. Don't let him take that too." In January, Emma did something terrifying. She reached out to her old thesis advisor from architecture school. Professor Morrison remembered her immediately. "Emma, I've wondered what happened to you. You just disappeared after graduation." "I got married, lost myself for a while, but I'm back now, and I want to know, is it too late to try again?" There was a smile in Professor Morrison's voice. "It's never too late to remember who you are. Come see me. Let's talk." They met at the university. Walking through the architecture building felt like stepping into a previous life. Students hunched over drafting tables, the smell of printer ink and coffee, walls covered in sketches and models and possibility. Professor Morrison looked older, grayer, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence Emma remembered. "Show me what you've been working on." Emma pulled out her sketchbook, the one from her balcony. Simple drawings. Studies in light and space and small moments. These aren't buildings. No, but they're about seeing, about noticing space and how it holds us. Professor Morrison studied the sketches with careful attention. "You've lost your technical edge, but you've gained something else. Depth, emotional intelligence. These drawings understand what space means to people who are hurting." She looked up. "I'm teaching a continuing education course this spring. Advanced design for professionals coming back to the field. It's not a degree program, just skill building, but it might be what you need to remember what you know." Emma felt something flutter in her chest. Hope? Terror? Both? "I'd like that." She enrolled the next day. William took her to dinner to celebrate. A different restaurant this time, upscale but warm. The kind of place where success was quietly assumed rather than loudly displayed. "You're really doing this," he said, raising his glass. "Going back to architecture." "I'm trying. I don't know if I'm any good anymore." "You're good at everything you've shown me so far." Emma met his eyes. Something had shifted between them over the past months. They weren't just allies anymore. They were friends, real ones. The kind who called each other late at night when insomnia hit, who met for coffee to complain about nothing important, who understood each other's particular brand of rebuilding. "William, can I ask you something personal?" "Always." "Why haven't you ever married? You said you've been alone by choice, but why?" He considered the question, swirling wine in his glass. "I think after what James did, I decided trust was too expensive. Easier to work, to build things that couldn't betray me." "But Emma," he looked at her directly, "watching you survive what you've survived, seeing you rebuild with such grace, it's making me wonder if maybe I've been wrong about the cost of being alone." The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them was quite ready to name. "We're both broken," Emma said quietly. "In different ways, but broken. Maybe, or maybe we're both just careful now. There's a difference." Walking to her car later, Emma felt the winter cold bite through her coat, and instead of feeling miserable, she felt alive, sharp, present. She was 35 years old, divorced, starting over from scratch, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt like herself. Sometimes, my dear friends, God's greatest gift isn't giving us what we asked for. It's breaking what was broken so we can build something true. Spring came slowly, then all at once. Emma woke one morning in early March to find her tiny balcony bathed in golden light, the tree branches outside her window suddenly green with new leaves. The air smelled different, alive. She made coffee, sat in her one comfortable chair, and opened her sketchbook to a blank page. 3 months ago, that blank page would have terrified her. The pressure to create something perfect, something worthy, something that proved she wasn't wasted potential. Now she just drew. A coffee cup. Morning light, through leaves, small, true things. Professor Morrison's class had started in February, and Emma had approached it with equal parts excitement and dread. She'd been the oldest student there by 5 years, surrounded by ambitious professionals who'd kept their skills sharp, while she'd spent years managing someone else's life. The first assignment had been brutal. Design a community space that addressed a specific social need. Emma had stared at the blank drafting paper for hours, paralyzed by the fear of being bad at the thing she'd once loved. Then she'd remembered Dr. Chen's words. "Start where you are, not where you used to be, or where you think you should be. Just here. Now." So Emma had designed something simple, a shelter for people leaving abusive relationships. Small residential units clustered around a shared courtyard, private enough for safety, connected enough to not feel alone. Spaces designed to help people remember they were human, not just survivors. She'd presented it to the class with shaking hands, certain it was too simple, too emotional, not technical enough. Professor Morrison had studied it for a long time. This is what architecture should be, not showing off, serving, healing. She'd looked at Emma with something like pride. Welcome back. Those 2 words had meant everything. Dear friends, sometimes coming home to yourself isn't dramatic. It's just the quiet recognition that you belong in your own life again. William called her one evening in mid-March. "I have a proposition for you, a real one this time, not revenge adjacent." "I'm listening." "I'm developing a project, sustainable mixed-income housing complex. I need an architect who understands what it means to create space for people who are rebuilding their lives. Someone who's lived it, not just studied it." Emma's heart stuttered. "William, I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job. Contract work, fair market rate, full creative control over the residential design. I have engineers and project managers. I need someone who can make these buildings feel like home, not just shelter. I'm not certified yet. I'd need to work under a licensed architect. Already handled. I've partnered with Morrison's firm. She'll supervise, you'll design. Emma, I've seen your work from class. I've watched you rebuild yourself with the same careful attention you give to creating spaces. I trust you with this." Trust. Such a small word for such a massive gift. "Yes," Emma said, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. "Yes, I'll do it." They met at the project site a week later. 10 acres of empty land on the edge of the city, close enough to jobs and schools, but far enough from downtown to be affordable. Emma stood in the middle of it, feeling wind that smelled like possibility, and saw it. Not just buildings, but a community. Spaces that understood what it meant to start over. Gardens for growing things, courtyards for meeting neighbors, windows positioned to catch morning light, because that was when hope felt most fragile. "What do you see?" William asked, standing beside her. "Home," Emma said simply. "I see home for people who forgot what that felt like." They worked on the project for 3 months, Emma at her drafting table late into the night, William reviewing designs and offering feedback that was always challenging but never diminishing. Sometimes they'd meet for coffee to discuss details, stairwell width, natural lighting, the importance of private outdoor space, but often they'd just talk about rebuilding, about trust, about what it meant to create something meaningful after loss. One evening in May, after a particularly long design session, William said, "I need to confess something." Emma looked up from her drawings, pencil still in hand. "What?" "When I first contacted you, I told myself it was about destroying James's deal, getting revenge for what he'd stolen from me, and that was true, but Emma—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "It stopped being about that pretty quickly. Watching you stand up for yourself, seeing you rebuild with such integrity, you reminded me why I loved architecture in the first place, why I wanted to create things that mattered. William, I'm not done." He met her eyes. "I think I'm falling for you. Have been for months. And I know that's complicated. I know we started this as allies in mutual destruction, and we're both still figuring out who we are after everything. But I needed you to know." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from trusting anyone again, to stay safely alone where no one could hurt her. But another part, the part that had spent a year learning to be brave again, wanted something different. "I'm terrified," she said honestly, "of trusting anyone, of believing in partnership again, of losing myself in someone else's life." "I know. But I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions." She stood, moving closer to him. "I don't know what this is or what it could be. I don't know if I'm ready for anything beyond friendship. But William, I'd like to find out, slowly, carefully, with both of us being honest about what we can and can't give." He smiled, a real smile, warm and slightly uncertain. Slow and careful sounds perfect. They didn't kiss, not yet. They just stood together in her small apartment, surrounded by architectural drawings and possibility, and let the moment be enough. Sometimes, dear ones, love doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it grows like spring, so gradually you don't notice until suddenly everything's green. The divorce was finalized in June. Emma signed the last documents in Patricia's office, surrounded by legal language that officially erased 7 years of her life. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked. Emma thought about it, free and sad, both at once. That's the healthiest answer you could have given. With the settlement money, Emma did 3 things. First, she paid off Lauren's mortgage. Her sister protested, but Emma was firm. "You held me when I was broken. Let me do this." Second, she donated a significant sum to organizations that helped women leaving abusive relationships, because she'd learned that financial abuse was abuse, and she wanted other women to have resources she'd almost lost. Third, she bought a small house. Nothing extravagant. A 2-bedroom craftsman with a garden and a studio space that got perfect morning light. The day she got the keys, she stood in the empty living room and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming reality that this was hers. No one could take it from her. No one could force her to leave. No one had the power to make her small here. She was home. William helped her move in, along with Lauren and her family. They spent the day carrying boxes, assembling furniture, arguing about where to hang pictures. "You should put your designs on the walls," William suggested. "The ones from Morrison's class. They're just student work. They're yours. They're beautiful. They deserve to be seen." So Emma framed them, her shelter design, her community center sketches. the small drawings from her balcony of light and space and careful observation. Looking at them hanging on her walls, she saw not just designs, but evidence. Evidence that she'd survived, that she'd rebuilt, that she was becoming someone she could be proud of. One evening in late June, Emma received an unexpected email from James. She stared at his name in her inbox for a long time before opening it. "Emma, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. And I know I don't deserve any response. But I needed to say this, even if you never read it. I'm sorry. Not for leaving. We both know the marriage was over, but for how I left, for the cruelty, for making you think you were less than you are. I've been in therapy for 6 months. My therapist says I have a pattern of destroying people who get too close, says I mistake control for love. I don't know if that's true or just expensive words for being a coward. You deserved better than me. You probably always did. I heard about the housing project you're designing. It sounds beautiful. I'm glad you found your way back to architecture. I'm sorry I was the obstacle. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that some part of me, the part that used to be capable of real feeling, is genuinely happy you're okay. Take care of yourself." Emma read it 3 times, looking for manipulation or hidden agenda. But it just seemed tired, human. The words of someone who'd destroyed his own life as thoroughly as he'd destroyed hers. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. His apology wasn't for her to absolve, it was for him to carry. Instead, she closed the laptop and called William. "Want to take a walk?" They walked through her new neighborhood as the sun set, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. Families were out on porches, children played in yards, dogs barked, life happening in ordinary, beautiful ways. "James sent me an apology," Emma said. "How do you feel about that?" "Indifferent, mostly, which is strange. A year ago, I would have wanted revenge or validation or proof that he regretted everything. Now I just feel done. He's not part of my story anymore. He's just someone I used to know." William took her hand. "That's healing." "Is it? Shouldn't I feel more? Anger or satisfaction or something?" "No, love. Healing is exactly this. When the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant, when you can receive their apology and not need it. When you're so busy building something new that you forget to hate what was." They stopped in front of Emma's house, lights glowing in the windows she'd chosen, garden growing vegetables she'd planted, space that held her without demanding she be anything other than herself. "I never thanked you," Emma said suddenly, "for everything. For funding the divorce, for the job, for being there when I was falling apart." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though. Because you gave me something more valuable than money or revenge. You treated me like I was still a whole person when I'd forgotten how to be one. That gift," her voice broke, "that gift saved my life." William pulled her close, and this time they kissed, soft and careful and full of everything they'd both been too afraid to want. When they pulled apart, Emma was crying, happy tears this time. The kind that come from relief and gratitude and the strange miracle of finding love in the wreckage of loss. "I need you to know something," she said. "I'm not the same person I was when we met. I'm still figuring out who this version of me is. Some days I'm strong, some days I'm a mess. Some days I don't know if I can trust anyone, including myself. If you want this," she gestured between them, "you need to know it won't be easy." "Emma." William cupped her face, thumbs wiping away tears. "I don't want easy. I want real. I want you, messy and strong and still figuring it out. That's the only version worth having. And my dear friends, isn't that the truth? We don't need people who love perfect versions of us. We need people who love us while we're still becoming." 3 months later, Emma stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the housing project. William beside her, Professor Morrison smiling with pride, contractors and city officials gathered to celebrate. She'd done it. Designed something real, something that would help people rebuild their lives the way she'd rebuilt hers. In her pocket was a small stone she'd picked up from the empty lot that first day. A reminder of beginning, of seeing possibility in emptiness. When it was her turn to speak, Emma looked at the gathered crowd and felt something she'd never experienced before. Complete, unshakable certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "This project," she said, "is for everyone who's ever had to start over, for everyone who's lost everything and wondered if they could survive it, for everyone learning to build a life on their own terms, in their own time, with their own definition of success." She looked at William, then at Lauren in the crowd, then at the empty land that would soon become home for dozens of families. "We're not just building houses. We're creating space for second chances. For the understanding that breaking isn't the end of the story, it's sometimes the beginning." The applause was warm, genuine, but what Emma felt wasn't triumph. It was peace. That night, sitting on her porch with William, watching fireflies dance in the garden, Emma thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, broken on a kitchen floor, wondering if she'd ever feel whole again. She'd survived, more than survived. She'd become someone new, someone stronger and softer at once. Someone who understood that love wasn't about making yourself small. It was about finding someone who made space for you to be large. "What are you thinking?" William asked. "That I'm grateful for all of it, even the pain, because it taught me who I am when everything else is stripped away." "And who's that?" Emma smiled. "Someone worth knowing." Final reflection. No woman returns from betrayal unchanged. The pain alters the eyes, shifts the ground beneath the feet, rewrites the definition of trust. But here's what I've learned, my dear family of listeners who've walked this journey with me. Healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about discovering who you're becoming. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about rebuilding with more careful hands and more honest vision. Love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about becoming complete enough to choose partnership from wholeness, not from need. And faith, true faith, isn't about believing everything happens for a reason. It's about believing you have the strength to give it one. Emma's story doesn't end with revenge on James or a fairy tale marriage to William. It ends with her, standing in a space she created, living a life she chose, knowing, finally, beautifully knowing her own worth. That's the victory, not over him. Over the voice that said she couldn't survive without him. If you're reading this while your own world is crumbling, hold on. The path through grief is long and messy and sometimes unbearable, but on the other side is a version of yourself you haven't met yet. Someone who survived, someone who grew, and that person, dear one, that person is going to be magnificent.